Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me today to speak to you. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that I'm working on it every day, but I thought I'll just put it in the context of what has happened in the past, what's currently is happening, and what's going to happen in the future, in my opinion. So the talk today will be about medical image analysis, which is something I've been working on. I did my PhD on that, and then still until now I've been doing it. So this is the title of my talk, and the agenda is I'm going to talk about before. I think the timing is perfect because I speak after Dr. Keith, and the talk before me was just trying to introduce you to some terminologies, which is great because I'm going to build on top of that and also convey some important information about like technical details in AI. And then I'm going to talk about in generic terms, what's AI in healthcare, like the applications. Then I'll focus a bit on medical imaging, especially in the work that I do with my research team. And then we'll talk about some challenges, which I've heard many other people spoke about it today. So I'm going to be very quick on that one. But then from my perspective, what I think where AI is going to head in the healthcare domain. Before I speak about these challenges, let me just also tell you about a bit of my background. So I did my PhD long ago in fetal ultrasound image analysis, where I tried to look into coming up with AI-driven solution to analyze fetal ultrasound. And from that time, I was fascinated about this domain, and I stayed working on it. But I'm not a clinician, but I work very closely with clinicians. And as it was mentioned in previous presentation, the majority of my work is with radiologists, simply because it's the domain where AI has lots of potential. So the good news is that most of you are clinicians, I assume, and I don't need to put this slide when I speak to technical people because they don't see, some of them don't see the challenges that we have around in healthcare domain. So we are an aging population. There's lots of diseases that we don't have really a proper way of handling it. Every hospital is just really requires cutting costs and expenses as much as they could. So there is always a need for an efficient way of doing things at hospitals. But also we have a huge shortage of doctors. I mean, I think last number I read in the UK, we had, I think, 33,000 patients per radiologist, if I remember the number correctly. But that's in the UK. So you can, if you go to other part of the world, you probably can guess that this number is actually much bigger. You have much more number of people for one radiologist. So we need help, and we need help through technology, in my opinion. This is briefly like the team I have. So during my work, I work almost on a daily basis with doctors, mostly radiologists. So I work with lots of hospitals all over the UAE and abroad, including Sheikh Shakhbout Medical City, Cornish Hospital, SKMC, Sheikh Khalifa Hospital, Canad, and so on and so forth. Without them, I do nothing, really. Without them, I can't do anything. I work with them closely. I speak to them almost on a daily basis to try to tackle problems. I'm a researcher, so I try to do that from a research perspective, but at the same time, I have that thing inside me that I think, like, I want to translate that. Because I learned that just writing papers and publishing just doesn't help. So tomorrow I have another lecture where I'm going to focus about fetal imaging, and I'll show you like some success stories of AI in healthcare, especially in fetal health. Right, so the previous lecture mentioned about these terminology, AI, and then it's similar figure. I'm not going to go deep into Gen AI because I knew that there will be a Gen AI, generative AI session. So the focus today, I'm just to tell you something. What's the story behind it? Why it wasn't famous, or why it wasn't popular in the past, and why we now have AI everywhere. So AI has been in the books for so many years. We've been studying that for so many years. And it's important to distinguish between AI and machine learning. Machine learning is a subset of AI, it's the major subset of it. And we have that in the books for so many years, but we didn't see success until roughly 2012. I don't know if you heard of that year. That year is the year where we have a major change on mostly two things, maybe three. So we have an influential scientific breakthrough into how to make what we call deep learning algorithm work. Deep learning algorithms were in the books also for so many years, but we did not as scientists, been able to make them work. And then until 2012, for two reasons, because we have a scientific improvement in the algorithms, but also the hardware has improved, and we had what we call GPUs. Because of that, the past, before deep learning, everything was very slow, not just in healthcare, everywhere. But from 2012 until now, we had a huge improvement. I would say healthcare was probably one of the slowest industry to really have outcomes or have tools that use AI. Not because they didn't start early, but because in the healthcare industry, it takes a longer time to reach to the point where you can actually have, say, an FDA-approved product and use it on patient. Okay? So before the era of deep learning, what did we do? I mean, I was working with AI in healthcare, but most of my work was either using rule-based system or handcrafted features. So we were engineering the features to be able to understand the difference between a patient or brain MRI with a tumor or glioblastoma and a patient without glioblastoma. So we were engineering this feature, and it was a very tedious task. It didn't work very well. And that's before the era of deep learning. And then also, what we used to do is lots of statistical methods before the era of deep learning. We didn't have data. One of the presenters mentioned that. This is one of the factors that help us now have great outcomes when it comes to AI in general, and also specifically in healthcare. We have more and more data, and with AI is hungry for data. The more you give it data, the more likely it will give you better outcomes, as long as this is a good curated data. Okay. Well, one of the issues that we also used to do, and we didn't do it, I mean, we couldn't do it in the past, is we couldn't work with multimodality. Now, current AI models in healthcare and other domains, we can work with multimodal data. We can have an MRI, a CT, and a PET scan, an electronic health record, and possibly some genetic information, and have them within that AI model, which the previous presenter was mentioning, that transformer network. That's the paper that came by Google in 2017, which was influential and just changed the whole way of how we deal with data. Anyway, so let me now, this is the past, but let me now tell you about what we currently do. I'm going to focus on research I do at MBZ University of Artificial Intelligence. So before I do that, I know this is about radiology, but also AI is very common in other type of healthcare. So it could be used in drug. We use it in the assessment, in the drug development, in the NLP domain, which the previous presenter was mentioning. Obviously, diagnostic. This is what we are, and prognostic. AI is something that we are all talking about here. In administration, this is something we miss. I mean, AI, for instance, one of the aspects that will help a hospital to work well is to predict who's not going to come to an appointment, for instance, or who's going to miss an MRI scan, because you can utilize these or perform some different way of administrating your asset inside the hospital. Personalized medicine is an important aspect that people are also studying. And how would you use wearables? And I think one of the presenters also talked about that, how you use other type of data to help improve healthcare. So my team and I, which is about 25 researchers, perform lots of research on medical data through AI, but the focus is mostly imaging. So some of my work is not in imaging, but the majority of it is in imaging. It spans across different modalities, from ultrasound, from the top left you see an echocardiography, to working on heart, which I'm going to talk about it today, fetal imaging, brain imaging, and much more. So in the coming few slides, I'm going to show you some of the work that we do at the university in my team. So let's start with pulmonary embolism. I mean, I'm not a clinician, so don't quote me on any clinical sentence that I may just don't properly tell you about. But PE is one of the problems that you face in any hospital. So if a patient comes in with a chest pain, for instance, in emergency department, one of the things that they need to do is roll out PE. So what they do, I mean, you know that more than me, so you do a CT scan and then a radiologist go through it to just roll out PE. Okay. So with current technologies, and now we have that actually with SSMC, we have an AI tool that we build with them, that we do some research and clinical evaluation, that in a press of a button, it reviews the whole CT scan, figures out if there is PE or not, and tells you where it is. So what this happens with the radiologist that we're working with is simply just simplify his life. It just makes him focus on what he should be focusing on. If I have a whole CT scan, it just tells me, we suspect PE with 80% probability, and it's roughly here. So now he or she does not need to go through every single slice to verify PE. And we know that radiologists don't have lots of time to go. They have lots of cases they have to go through. And this sort of tool, which is now used in SSMC for under clinical evaluation, helps cut a lot of the unnecessary time that gets wasted. Another study that we're working with the University of Oxford on is coronary artery disease. We know this is the leading cause of death. The simple question we tried to answer in 2018, at that time I was there, is if I have a CT angiography, could AI tell me what's the likelihood of having a coronary artery disease after a year or 2 or 3? So how would you know that? I mean, there's no stenosis in the arteries. So that's what we wanted to study. There was a paper published in Lancet 2018-19 done on 4,000 patients in the UK that shows there are some novel biomarkers that you can see by AI, not by human eye, that can tell the future. So, and with high sensitivity and specificity. So then now this study is now called Orphan study, which is a study on 100,000 patients that has been recruited already, most of them, around 75,000 already recruited. One center is in Abu Dhabi, and lots of centers in the UK, 75% of the centers in the UK, but then we have 32 other centers all over the world. So the real question we're trying to do here, can we come up with novel biomarkers that can tell the future in a year or 2 or 3 to predict coronary artery disease? And then how it works, if you're interested, it simply quantifies the fat around the arteries and tries to measure if there's any inflammation there. This is something you cannot see by eye, but by computer, there are some tiny signal you can see in these Hounsfield units on the CT angiography scan. And then we came up with what we call a biomarker called fat attenuation index that can predict the future before even stenosis started to appear. Because before stenosis appears, we have inflammation. We're expanding that. We're now studying multiple other arteries and other problems. We're looking at carotid arteries. We're looking at other type of other parts of the world where we can quantify inflammation through AI. Another study that I have in the university that is looking at distinguishing Alzheimer and vascular dementia. So what we wanted to do is looking at MRI scans alongside electronic health records, genomics information, and possibly any other source of data, and try to quantify different biomarkers in the brain to see if we can tell the difference between Alzheimer patient and vascular dementia. We know dementia is the main type of dementia is Alzheimer disease, but also we have the second main type of dementia is vascular dementia. The distinguishing between them by a neuroradiologist in some cases is very challenging. So what we did is we built an automatic system like what you see in this figure, which we feed in the MRI scan alongside other information from electronic health records and other type of information. It's simply what it does, it segments out if 32 structure in the brain automatically and accurately, and then generate radiomics features from these ones, such as the texture, the size, and many others. And then through AI, we managed with a high sensitivity, it's approximately 85% sensitivity, to distinguish these between Alzheimer and vascular dementia. We're expanding that now on a large study. So this is done on approximately 2,200 patient data. Another type of research I do at the university is to look into oncology domain. This is where we look into multiple cancers. Just mention one cancer here, but my team and I work on other type of cancers. But this is we've been working for about 3 or 4 years on head and neck cancer. It's not the most common cancer, but it's probably around the 7th common cancer in the world, which is roughly happening here. So one way to quantify it is to have a CT and PET scan, and then based on that, you segment out the cancer or lymph nodes. But the question we wanted to answer here is not just quantify the cancer. Or the main study we worked on for quite a long time is prognosis. Could we tell whether the cancer will come back or not after whether some type of treatment? Or the other question we were trying to answer is survival. When will this patient is likely to die? And then from this work, we managed to create an AI-driven solution that is able to quantify cancer from head and neck cancer and also be quite accurate. When I say accurate, I'm talking about 72% concordance index. This is a metric to measure information about prognostic information. And we published that in 3 or 4 papers in multiple stages. Right, that's not it. I mean, my team and I, we work on many other aspects. There's no time to talk about it. I cut off all the Gen AI that we do. For instance, with SSMC, we work on chest X-ray generation. So, for instance, you have a report, and you can generate an X-ray from it, or the other way, or actually some prompt to say, create a chest X-ray of a patient with pleural effusion and, I don't know, and some consolidation on the right lung, something like that. So you put that prompt in, you get an X-ray. That could be very helpful for training, but at the same time, creating more and more data for us. The other thing is also something we do, and now we're validating that with SSMC in Abu Dhabi, is report generation. So you get the X-ray with the press of a button, even without the press of a button, you get the report, structured report. So you as a radiologist, what you do is just to verify that, make sure that everything is correct, and just confirm. We have other projects that we work on, neurodegenerative, we work on multiple sclerosis. My team and I heavily work on fetal imaging, so I'm going to talk about it tomorrow. And other projects. I don't have time to talk about it, but I'll be happy to talk to you today or tomorrow about it. In the last 2 minutes, I'll try to say where the future is, like, at least from my opinion, or where I want the future. This is not where everyone else thinks where the future in healthcare. But in my opinion, I would like to see the future to be an affordable and accessible healthcare. What I mean by that, a way that healthcare could be reached to the person rather than the person goes to the hospital, especially for people who are in remote areas, in unfortunate areas like war zone. You can't really bring them to the hospital. And also, actually, you don't need to bring everyone to hospital. You want to reduce the effort on doctors in hospital. So if someone can be looked at home or in a primary care unit, this is where I think AI should be very, very helpful. And what I want to focus on is point-of-care ultrasound. Some of you may have seen these devices. I don't know if I haven't looked outside for Fuji, but point-of-care ultrasound is a tiny device you can use as an ultrasound device, and you can see the images on the smartphone. I should have brought one with me from Abu Dhabi. I forgot. Anyway, the question is, that can be cheap technology that can be put in the hand of low-skilled person, like a midwife. But the question is, how can a midwife check if there's a congenital heart disease in a fetus, or if the fetus is in the right orientation, or if there is any problem? That's just on fetuses, but it could be used in many other places, where if you can put it in the hand of a person that doesn't know much, but can just scan the carotid artery, and then figure out if there's any stenosis or starting of stenosis on that artery, which may lead, as we know, to stroke. On top of that, this is where I'm going to talk a little bit about it tomorrow, about point-of-care ultrasound. But I think AI also will be helpful not just in diagnostic. It is very important in other aspects, especially administrative aspects. For instance, one of the projects that we work on is acute kidney injury. How could you predict that a patient will have AKI after an elective surgery? This costs hospital a lot of money. I think the number I had last year from one of the largest group hospital in Abu Dhabi, it cost him 2 billion dirham for AKI patient, because that is on the, it will be paid by the hospital, not by the insurance. And the integration with other sensors is also very important. I'm going to skip the challenges because my colleagues here spoke about it in a lot of detail, but I want to finish with the take-home message. There are lots of applications of AI in healthcare, and I've been part of teams where we created FDA-approved medical product. The past was slow because they have issues with the technology, but currently there's a lot of development of AI in healthcare. There are several challenges we still have to really address. And then finally, in my opinion, AI should be the tool that will make healthcare affordable and accessible and sustainable as well. I haven't mentioned that word because the current model of healthcare system, in my opinion, is not sustainable. We're 8 billion now. We're going to be much more soon. So how would we handle that? And with that, thank you very much.